Well, hello, this is Denise Miller, your Leadership Lady Live, and we're here for our third in the series of videos about leadership tone. But before we go further, I'd like to ask you to please, if you are just dating me every once in a while and you haven't committed, but you listen to my videos, I ask that you would be kind enough to please hit the thumbs up or the heart, depending on where you're listening from, and please do follow, subscribe, and share. Now, back to our topic for the day. We're talking about leadership tone and organizational culture. And this is our final video exploring that topic. Today, we're going to expand our perspective to understand how the collective tone of an organization leader's fundamentally shapes the organization's culture, performance, and identity. There is a connection. I call it the culture tone connection. Organizational culture has been defined historically as how we do things around here. But I'd like to maintain that it can also be defined as how we sound around here. The tone of leadership communications, or the distinctive emotional and communicative environments, create what I call an organization's acoustic signature. Acoustic is a musical term that describes how sounds reverberate in an enclosed space, and an organization's acoustic signature describes how communications happen within the enclosed environment of the organization. It causes sounds that resonate just as they would in a concert hall. Now, those sounds resonate in the executive suites, and they are then trickled down to the lower level of management, down to the very basic first line supervisor. One of the things that's interesting is that acoustic signature has a lot to do with team effectiveness. And we learned that more than 15 years ago when Google conducted its Oxygen project. The results are still true today. And it described how success resulted from how managers communicated with their teams. Teams with managers who used a consistently respectful, clear, and supportive tone showed 30% higher activity, 25% lower turnover, and significantly high levels of job satisfaction among the team members. Let's remember, once again, leadership tone has a cascading effect through the organizational leaders. And when senior leaders consistently use a tone that's respectful, genuine, and open, so will other leaders in the organization. Whatever the senior leaders do gets normalized at the lower levels of the organization. There are four cultural tones that I want to discuss very briefly, and then we will go on to talk about what it is that you can do to make sure that your tone is the tone that you would like it to have. The first is the command culture tone. That is something that we find in first responders and the military. It is very definitive about the leader says, this is what I want. This is how we're doing it. This is when we're doing it. And it needs to be done by Thursday. And we can understand why in those kinds of environments. Lives are at stake. Strong on execution, but very weak on innovation, because innovation is not generally what's needed to save lives in a crisis environment. Then there's the competitive culture. And that, unfortunately, is where the leader is pitting his team against another team or one team member against another. And they try to almost manipulate team members into performing well. Well, I don't understand why it's taking you so long. Mary had hers done yesterday. That's a problem because stars will thrive while people who are good but not great tend to just get lost. Now, the third is the collaborative culture, and that is where the team leader gets everyone together to collaborate, to get their perspectives. If someone doesn't agree, they want to hear more about why. It's about innovation and problem solving, and everyone flourishes in this environment because there's such tremendous psychological safety. Decisions take longer, but when they're made, everyone is on board. Nobody slacks generally. And then finally, there's the developmental culture where the leader communicates as a coach. And when there is a failure, they want to find out why. They ask, what can we do to help you so that this won't happen again? This is the leader that picks up someone that falls, encourages them to keep going, and then works with them to find out where the misstep happened and how it can be corrected. It's a continuous improvement environment, and people are encouraged to grow. Now, there are some practical applications to how we use this information. The first is to have a tone audit and adjustment of your own tone and your organization's tone. Take a look at the tones that you hear happening in meetings, in one-on-ones, at presentations, and even the tones you read when you read email, because even though we read email, we actually hear a voice speaking to us with the tone. And analyze for dominant patterns. And then once you've done that, determine whether those patterns that you recognize are patterns that are congruent with who the organization wants to be or what the organization says that it is. That's called aspirational culture. And then the next thing is to develop tonal awareness. Be aware of your own tone. Be aware of how you're going to go into a meeting, the tone that you want to express in the meeting. Make sure that you have it written down so that it's noted and you know to move in that direction. Then, as you're in the meeting, listen to yourself. What tone are you portraying in that meeting? And then the last is a post meeting tone reflection. And that's where you reflect on the tone that you actually used to see if you behaved and spoke in the way that you wanted to. And the fourth thing is to practice tonal agility. I call it tonal code switching because you can't use the same tone in every situation and on every person. You need to be able to fluidly go from one tone to another. The only one that I suggest that leaders not use is the comparison tone because that is generally something that shames people. And that's the last thing that you want to do. Now, remember this, your tone as a leader or your tone, your organizational tone affects who's attracted to join your team or your organization, what behaviors get rewarded or promoted, how customers experience your brand, and then the most fun part is how legends are formed, the stories that we all remember. As we conclude this exploration of tone, I want you to do a couple of things. Identify your personal tone, your default tone, and then expand your tonal repertoire. Whatever your default tone is, every now and then switch into one of the other tones that I suggested. And then begin to listen beyond words to the collective tone of your organization and ask yourself, what culture are we truly creating here? Thank you so much for listening. It has been wonderful to deliver these three messages on tone to you over the week, and I look forward to next week's series of videos. Have a great evening and a wonderful weekend.